couple of years.
Completely agree. All right. I want to introduce Payton. Do I have this right? Is it Soicher? Is that right?
Soicher, close enough.
Okay, Soicher. We'll go with that. Payton, I'm glad to meet you in person. We've obviously been talking on Twitter for a while. Totally support your website, the
Thank
rankings
you.
right now on Twitter. I want to introduce both Moen and Greg Flugar. I'm sure have seen his shows.
Hi guys.
And kind of tell us what you do. Tell everybody what rankings right now is. I tried to tell everybody kind of what you did, but I don't think I did a probably good job.
It's
So
okay.
why don't you tell everybody kind of what you do, and then if you want to show examples, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, great. Oh, so a couple of years ago, my dad went to Michigan State, so I kind of grew up like brainwashed into believing that anything in East Lansing is like the greatest thing ever. But so I was a couple of years ago in 2021, I was watching a game against Ohio State, Michigan State, Ohio State, week 12. So we were into the college football selection committee process. And I think it was Michigan State was ranked 7 and Ohio State was ranked 4. And at halftime, Ohio State was winning 49-0. And so I kind of was just sitting there being like, oh my God, this is just the worst beating I could possibly have ever imagined. This isn't anything that we wanted. We have no chance at being a top 4 ranked team at this point in with this loss. And so my wife, kind of poking fun at me, said, well, are they even going to be ranked in the top 25 anymore because this beating is so bad? And it kind of got me thinking, like, that's actually a really interesting question. I wonder if anyone is able to give me a real-time prediction on what the ranking is going to be now that we have this score and that this game is happening. So I went online and I didn't really see anything. I have a background in computer science and mathematics, and so I thought this might be an interesting little project to kind of put together and get a good feeling of, well, is this predictable? Meaning, if we know what the rankings are and we know what the scores of the games are going to be, are we able to accurately predict what the rankings are going to be of the AP top 25 up until this point in the year, and now starting with the College Football Selection Committee? And so after a couple years of tweaking the algorithm and having it as kind of like this little side project, earlier this year, I was able to get it into a relatively accurate position to say, okay, this is actually really interesting. And now I created this whole website that gives us the ability to change the scores of different games and outcomes, and you can see how the rankings will be affected by that scenario. We also have, we're on Twitter and Reddit, and our website is up to date in real time, or I should say near real time, to where as the games are going on and as the scores are changing and evolving, you can go ahead and see how the rankings are going to change going into the next release of the AP poll or the College Football Selection Committee. So that's kind of the idea of this, is to change the idea and the narrative around, okay, well, let's wait until Sunday to get our AP poll release, and let's wait until Tuesday to get our College Football Selection Committee release. The plan is over the next few years to get this algorithm better and better with more data and understanding what was weak about the algorithm this year and what was good about the algorithm, to the point where you can now know you don't have to wait until the release of the poll. You will know immediately as the game is going on, oh my gosh, if they win this game, they're going to move up to 6. If they lose this game, they're going to move down to 16. I believe it enhances the college football experience. I think it adds another element to it. Same thing with we have a what if simulation tool that I can show you here in a second, where you can change those scores. So the last second field goal that just missed, what would have happened if it would have gone in? How would that have changed my team's ranking going into the year had that field goal gone in, or had we not fumbled the game, or if we won in overtime? It's just been a lot of fun. It just adds a new element to the college football discussion.
Now, I posted your Twitter. What is your website link? I just want to make sure everybody gets that.
It's www.rankingsrightnow.com.
Rankings right now.
Rankings right now.
That's a little bit different than rank right now, which is on
yes,
Twitter,
I know.
right?
I think for some weird reason, I don't know if it was just when I had signed up, but like rankings right now was unavailable, so I had to go with ranked right now. Everywhere else, it's been rankings. Yeah,
we've all had that problem with something. I'm sure that's true. All right, so have you been on StreamYard before? Do you know how to?
Yes.
All right, go for it then. You can take over.
Great. Let me move around a couple screens. One second.
By the way, everybody, just so everybody knows, the Mafia team has been doing this all season, and everybody knows how Ute is into analytics. He loves this. It's something he is playing with every week.
I'm absolutely fascinated by listening to Payton. Payton, I got 2 quick questions.
Shoot.
One, how many times under your breath have you just said, geez, why did my wife ask me that question? Because that spurred on all this work and everything.
Up until the algorithm got like accurate. It was like, God, this is so stupid.
Now you're thanking her all the time. Second question. I'm going to have more. Second question is: do you think when you're doing this, are you thinking that there's a possibility of the selection committee? They have their own built-in algorithm rankings right now that maybe they're maybe not, but.
Are they going to steal your idea? Is that what you're saying, Greg?
Well, maybe not quite. Well, maybe steal it, but also like.
No, I know the question you're asking. I would be excited if they said we were going to move to something like this. Now, because what's so unique about this, and I'm a analytics nerd, I'm a machine learning guy, so let me give you a quick step back. Typically with machine learning algorithms, whether you see it on a ChatGPT or someone trying to predict the weather, you typically have the full range of outputs, right? You know what's going on. In the United States, we have this weird selection committee that is unique to anywhere else in the world.
That's right. It's the only thing in the world, the only league in the entire world.
The NFL, NHL, you know what the magic number is at the end of the year. Who's going to make it in and who's not going to make it, and what the rankings are going to be. In football, in Europe, right, or soccer, they have all of their setups for points. If you win, you get this much. If you tie, if you lose, you know the structure. We don't know anything. We just have this group of people that decide, get around and huddle around, be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you don't know. So, when like I say this in the term of it drives me crazy that the Florida State example is the easiest example last year, right? If you would have said, hey, undefeated Florida State, they're a conference champ. They win most of their games by a large margin. Did they make the Final Four? No. Everyone at the beginning of the year would be like, explain that to me. And even their reasoning for when Florida State didn't make it in was they said, okay, I'm not going to we don't like this quarterback situation.
Like last year. Let's talk Florida State.
Right. Like it gets wild. So if they came out and said, we're changing our approach to this, and we can now give a point system for how we're going to rank this, it would change everything. These BS schedules at the beginning of the year where people are playing nobodies, you're going to get rid of it. There's going to be mathematicians trying to come up with the perfect schedule to say, if you do this, this is our best chance of winning with our conference schedule. That's going to get us into the top 12. We have to play bigger teams. Better matchups come up out of it. It would be really, really cool, in my opinion, if they said, we really love this idea and we're going to go ahead and use this kind of thing. My job as a fan is done. I would be happy. I would be thrilled with this situation.
One more comment.
You remove the subjectivity out of it, right? That's the bottom line.
One more comment, and I promise I'll shut up, Payton and Nathan. This is, when you gave birth to this idea, it was incredibly fascinating. But now that is a 12-team playoff, right? You gave birth to this idea when we were living in the floor. Yeah. So now that we're at 12, this is even more.
It's more fun.
It's unbelievable. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Go
More
on.
conversation.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So this is the strangest weekend or week, right? We don't know anything about this selection committee. So we have this algorithm that is based upon typically how they vote, starting from when they have their first releasing of the rankings all the way until the final selection committee rankings come out, right? Now so this weekend is a very weird prediction. You're going in saying, if you have no context of any rankings, specifically the AP poll, which we're all kind of tuned into right now, even if you like it or you don't like it, you're used to seeing it. You're comfortable with it, right? Notre Dame, I'm going to just have a little tease in right here for a second, but Notre Dame, for example, you have at 8, or we have at 8 right now. That seems right because they've been in that area this entire year. So this is what the predicted rankings would be if we had the AP poll as kind of a guidance and say, given the last AP poll, and let's say that's the truth, which I don't think anyone here would agree, here's what the next slate of games, which these are all of the week 10 games right here, and their predicted scores based off of Las Vegas right now. This is if Ohio State wins 24-22 against Penn State would drop down to 5 in the rankings, and Ohio State would move up to 2 in the rankings.
Oh,
right?
I love this.
So this is kind of what the deal is right here. So let me throw in a little curveball and a little wrinkle. What if we didn't use the AP poll at all? And we said, we're just going to go blind and use the same algorithm as it builds up to this week. What does it look like? So here is my development area. And let me make sure I don't have any. We're good to go here. Okay, great. So if this was the case, there's some bad predictions in here, right? This is an algorithm. It makes bad, bold cases. It has Notre Dame at 2, right? That to me, when I saw this for the first time, I threw my hands in the air and said, damn it, something's clearly wrong here. But you have Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Georgia, those are the right top 5 teams. I think everyone would agree here. So if Notre Dame is right here, and we go ahead and look at their schedule real quick, everyone loves to focus in on that Northern Illinois loss. People cannot get over it, right? They just cannot move on from that loss because it was one of the biggest moments of the year, right? It's impossible to forget it. If you get rid of this, right, and just say that was week 2 Notre Dame, right? Same thing with Florida State last year. They said current Florida State is not a top 4 team, right? They might have had a top 4 overall result, but not right now. They're not a top 4 team. Notre Dame is on a hot streak. They're winning big, and they're beating teams that are legit competition. Louisville, Georgia Tech was ranked for a little bit this year. Navy, they just absolutely decimated, right? They're going to beat Florida State big. Maybe not 2, but top 5 maybe. And I think that might be surprising to a lot of people, right? Now, the next thing that came up to my mind is what the hell is going on here with Alabama and Ole Miss, right? Same thing. Do I actually think that Alabama and Ole Miss will be 7 and 8? No, I don't think so. I think those are a little bit too high. The reason why Alabama's so high is because they just had they just pitched a shutout against Mizzou, right? Mizzou is ranked high because they've had a tough schedule. They've won a lot of those games, even if they looked ugly. They've been ranked high throughout most of the year. And what the algorithm doesn't know is Alabama beat Missouri. I think it was 34-0, but that wasn't a real 34-0. That wasn't Missouri's best squad, right? It's a backup quarterback. It doesn't know this context. So what's cool about this algorithm is each week the rankings come out and it readjusts and realigns itself so that the predictions become accurate every single week. And it's not just running down this rogue trail of what it thinks is right versus what in reality is actually going down. So like I said, this is a weird week, but, I know BYU is always a hot contested subject. I keep getting mentioned by a Twitter account I will not name that's always asking questions about BYU. But according to the selection committee algorithm, they're at 11. So, and you have Indiana, Miami at 10, lower than a lot of people have them right now. So if you remember, if we go back to where they are, if you use the AP poll as kind of your guidance, they're sitting at 3, but not here. They're sitting at 10. And that's just because, they're not beating teams by very large margins. They've had weird comeback wins. It's so much that goes into every single week of exactly what should be what. But for this being the first year, I've been thrilled of what has actually gone on. And I think it's so much fun to play around with this and see different results and different scores. So real quick, I'll show you how it can kind of work. So at the very top, so let me actually, so this is actually the homepage. If you go to the current rankings, you can go ahead and subscribe to the weekly analysis newsletter. I kind of go into deep dives and write it all out, but it gives you the top score. So anytime throughout Saturday, you can go to rankingsrightnow.com, and right when you go to the homepage, it will give you the actual predicted rankings in that moment. So it takes games that are the projected scores, the completed scores. So right here, it shows you in progress, Boise State's blowing out San Diego State early, right? So it shows you the games that are in progress, the games that are completed, the games that are scheduled, all these different types of things that are going on. And like I mentioned earlier, for the scores that you see right here, they're projected based off of what Vegas is saying right now is the spread. So these things change, and when they change, the rankings will change. And so we will tweet out and whatever the case is. But if you want more up-to-date real time, you can go right here. You can always select all teams if you want to see what's going on below the top 25. You can create a login, and it will give you the ability to select your favorite teams, and your favorite teams will pop up at the very top, make them a little bit easier for you to find. If you go to our What If simulation tool, you can go ahead and click on that. It's free for anyone that has a login. You select the season that you're interested in, the algorithm that you want to use. So if you want to use the selection committee or the AP top 25, you can look at different weeks, but it allows you to go into any single game throughout the year. So it's not only just the most recent. If you want to say, hey man, if we go back all the way to week 5, and let's say Georgia were to win this game against Alabama, how would the rankings have changed? It changes those rankings and projects it out all the way up until today. So you have weird situations where like South Carolina and LSU had that crazy game where South Carolina had like 2 pick sixes that got taken back, right? If we change that game and South Carolina beats LSU, when I've run that simulation, it now like kicks LSU out of the top 25 for a while, and South Carolina is a top 20 team for a couple of weeks, I think, until they lost to Alabama, maybe. So all fun simulations. So like, let's go back to the non-AP poll influenced algorithm. Let's go ahead and get out of the all teams and back into the top 25. Let's go to week 10, and let's go ahead and update this Penn State game to see what would happen. So if we change the score from Ohio State winning by 2 to Ohio State losing by 2.
Now be careful here, Payton. You don't want Moen coming down on you.
I'm open to anything, right? But I think he actually might see what so it shows you your altered games to make sure that you know what games you've changed in your simulation. Let's go ahead and run the simulation, and it takes a second to run. It actually is much faster on the website, but this is a development environment. So in that case, Penn State goes up to number 1 if they beat Ohio State.
Wow.
Oregon 2, Notre Dame still at 3, Texas 4, Ohio State stays in the top 5, even with a loss. And that's mostly because they would have, according to this simulation, a 1-point loss against Oregon and a 2-point loss against Penn State, who are ranked 1 and 2. So I think we would all agree that, hey, they're still a deserving top 5 team. They've lost both those games on the road in very tough road environments. No one is saying that they shouldn't, they're not out of the top 10. According to how our algorithm, which is trained on historical voting data from these polls, says that if that was the case, Ohio State would still be number 5 going into the next.
Can I request a game?
Go for it.
Pittsburgh SMU.
Yes.
What if No, I think the line is what, 6.5. What was the line?
7.5.
Right. So there's your
Pittsburgh wins by touchdown.
Right there.
Can you make it Pittsburgh wins it by a touchdown?
Let's do. What do you want? Let's do 28-20, 28-21. How about that?
Yeah.
Confirm that.
You've got Pittsburgh 12 right now. No, you got SMU 12.
SMU at 12.
Pittsburgh 21. Okay.
So when this is the case, you see Pittsburgh up to 12, SMU down to 24.
Got it. Okay.
So let me get another question in. We have a ton of G5 fans, right?
Yeah.
Ohio or Oregon State, Washington State, San Diego State. So a lot of people, especially on the western part of the country. Oh, Tulane and Memphis as well. How does this represent those teams? Because necessarily the Power Four have so many natural advantages.
Great question.
How do you build in? Is there a security blanket for those schools, or how does that work?
There isn't a. Let me start with there isn't a. Are you an SEC school? Therefore, we're going to give you more points type of thing going on under the hood here. So what it really is taking into account is like I mentioned, it will reset itself after each week for the rankings of the top 25, because that's all we know, right? Especially with the AP poll, you can go down to 26, 27, 28, right? You know the votes.
Right.
For the selection committee, they say, here's our top 25, and we're not telling you who 26 is. So we have a good idea based off of how the algorithm tunes itself to say, for example, if we go ahead, I'm just going to reset the scores and rerun the simulation to make sure we're all on the same page here. But we know roughly, 26, 27, all the way down. You can go all the way down to the very bottom at Kent State, Kennesaw State, the teams that have really struggled this year. But what we really do, especially for the playoff committee, is we have to give it a starting point. So we always give it the AP top 25 as the starting point. And then the algorithm projects itself out. And the only thing that it's really interested in is this a conference game? So it's not saying, is this the SEC conference game? Is it a conference game? Are you home, away, neutral? Points, home and away. And from the points, you get the spread, you get the points scored. So there's a difference between winning 14-7 and winning 49-42, right? It's a 7-point margin, but it's a completely different game. Those are the things that it's taking into account. And based off of that, we can get fairly accurate results of these predictions. And if we go real quick, I'll show you, because a lot of people always are saying, like, how accurate are these things, man? Like, which I get it, totally fair. So we post all of our results every single week. I'm just gonna go to the dashboard real quick of our newsletter, and we show for example, the Week 10 poll versus rankings right now. So this is how we're able to determine how close we are. So, for example, we show how close the final predictions are, right?
Wow.
And so, first year, I've been thrilled, right? So that was last week for Week 10. There was a week, maybe Week 5, I want to say, where it was awesome. This was Week 6.
I still think it's awesome, Payton.
It's a lot of green, right? So that's the challenge to me. How close can we get this thing? And I don't say, well, the AP votes were close. I talk about it a little bit in the newsletter and discuss like exactly what's going on. But, we're dead on for a lot of these things. Usually up through, on the AP poll, at least up through about 15, we're pretty damn close on where things are going. And so just knowing the contents of who's home, who's away, is it a neutral game, the rankings of the teams, how good they are, all these different types of things, we don't really need things like, well, who's in the SEC versus who's in the Big 12 versus all these different types of things. Throw it out the window. just knowing where your ranking is, who you're playing, a lot of what this algorithm is based off of is who you played and when you played them. It makes a gigantic difference. If you play a team early in the year, it doesn't have nearly as big of an effect as later in the year because we know where you are now. All the frauds have gone away. Yeah. All the teams that were big hype at the beginning of the year. No one is saying right now, well, Oregon didn't look that great against Idaho, so I don't think they should be number one. No one cares about that anymore.
Right.
We've moved past it. So, when a Penn State plays Ohio State, maybe at the beginning of the year, there's a big change in the rankings, right? Clemson played Georgia at the beginning of the year. They went from 15 to 25 after that loss, right? I think if Clemson were to play Oregon and have the same outcome, I don't think Clemson goes from 15 to 25. They might go from 15 to 18 or 19 or 20. So It all really depends. And then the last thing that I'll say, and if we go real quick on X, one of the fun things that we also do is we do 10,000 simulations of each of these teams, and we can see we randomize a lot of the scores. We go off the ESPN FPI index to say who's going to win and who not. So for SMU, for example, ESPN is giving them a 71% chance of winning this game. If we run 10,000 simulations of week 10 and randomize a lot of the scores, but 71% of the scores end in SMU winning, here were the projected, or here were the percentages of times they ended up in each ranking. And you have the green, which is if they win, here's the percentage of time that they ended in those scenarios. If they lose, here's the percentage of time. So, for example, SMU, if they win, they are most likely to end up at 17 and 18. If they lose, their most likely scenario is they end up at 23 in the rankings. So we do this each week. It's a trove of data. It's too much to completely ingest sometimes, but it's been fun, man. It's really cool. I know the things I want to work on in the off season and fix up and tune up a little bit, but the goal, as I mentioned from the very beginning, the goal of this is to enhance the college football experience and to add something new to the table. And I don't know of anything else that gives you this kind of flexibility to play around with this and see the potential of rankings. And people love to tweet at me for the first up until now, from the beginning to now, the rankings don't matter. Rankings don't matter. They love to complain about my rankings and say that the rankings don't matter. They matter. We all pay attention to them. It's a focal point of college football because we're always, we're always up to these people that are the experts. And it's great to know under the hood of maybe how they're actually reacting to things. There's my sales pitch of rankings right now. I'm finished.
Okay, Payton. Now let's get serious here. Gophers, Illinois. Go to that game. Illinois is rated number 24.
Okay, let me go ahead and get out of all teams. Show the top 25.
I just want to know what my beloved Minnesota Golden Gophers have to do to climb closer to Illinois. I see they're number 24. Okay.
Okay, Illinois. So for whatever reason, it's not okay. Maybe it's just because it's out. So if you don't see it, we can always go to all teams. You can collapse these things to make them a little bit easier. So let's right here,
Minnesota, Illinois. There you go. Now Minnesota's favored by 2.
Yep.
Even though they're playing at Champaign. Yep. And if you confirm that, I've seen where you've got it where Illinois drops 4 spots, 24 to 28. But go ahead and hit that confirm anyways. I just want to see. So Illinois drops 4.
So let's see. Illinois down to 33 in the AP poll, or in the non-influenced AP poll. Sorry. Let's go back to the current website, which is using that AP poll as kind of that baseline.
Yeah.
If I showed people that Notre Dame was number 2, with no context, they would lose their mind. So I'm easing people into this. So yes, right here you're saying Illinois dropping 4.
Now, can you see where Minnesota is after that 2-point victory?
Yes.
Would they be 38-48? Can we see what that is?
So let's go ahead and let's see who can find them first. So Minnesota,
46.
right here, 46, moving up 9 spots.
Okay. All right. So then let's just make one more adjustment to the score that I think it's going to be.
Do you want the AP influenced? Let's see where Minnesota sits over here. 44.
Okay.
They're right here.
Let's do the score that I think it's going to be.
Okay.
35-20 Minnesota.
35-20 Minnesota.
Wow.
And then I won't bother you anymore. I just want to see what happens.
Sure. So here's our updated algorithm. Just as a reminder, we had Illinois at 33, Minnesota at 44. So now we're expanding that margin of victory, right?
Yes,
so let's go ahead and run the simulation. Use it on the website. I promise you guys it's faster.
Oh,
so in this scenario, let's see. Oh, I have to go to all teams. Let's see. Minnesota up to 41.
Right.
There we
15
go. 35.
spots.
35.
Wow.
35.
There we go. Okay. 35-20.
Yeah, right. Small tweaks make a difference here. Yeah. So it's fun. And you know, there's that striking range to break into the top 25.
Correct. All right. So one thing, thank you so much for coming on, Payton, going through this with everybody. Oh, we've been long overdue. We need to do this with Wild Ute, right? Because he is probably your number one supporter. He's been great. He's on your side every week. He engages. He really cares. We'll have to have you back. But I think the one overriding question of every question anybody could ask you, in my opinion, it would be, where do you think this goes with the CFP in the next 4 weeks?
I mean, Notre Dame looks really, really poised to. They're not going to be a top 4 seed. They can't be, or a top 4 seed, right? Seed's the appropriate word for this, because of the rules. But they don't look like there's anyone in their way. The Army-Navy situation is strange. If you're thinking of a group of 5, right? Army fits into that group of 5 where they might fit in there. I don't know if you guys peeked at that. It wasn't the current selection committee algorithm, not using any AP poll, is not huge on Boise State. So
we saw that.
Army has a good, if they can hold on, and they have to play Notre Dame this year at the very end. If they can hold on to that, that's important. The biggest question to me is, what do you do with LSU, Alabama, those one loss, Texas, right? There's some strange things that can go on over there. So if you want to go into Big 12 situations, does CU make its way into a championship game?
Yeah.
I don't have too many answers. It's like we're in a really good spot. It's really exciting going into these last couple of weeks. The only thing that the algorithm doesn't have right now is conference championship games, just because of you can't like, there's so many of these different rules that are going in that I haven't programmed to say, well, if it's this scenario and this scenario and this scenario, it goes to this team, right? So I go all the way up until the conference championship. Once those games are announced, they will be a part of the simulation and a part of the website. It's all good there. But man, it's like, I'm very, very curious on, Ohio State. The Ohio State Penn State game is enormous right now. Like, a lot of these teams are having like 1 or 2 major implication games that are going to make a lot of difference here coming in the final stretch.
And
you can see Moen's jaw muscles tighten up.
Well, I just want to put this out here, Payton, because you mentioned it earlier, scheduling stronger opponents at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Sounds perfect for an SEC Big Ten scheduling agreement.
I mean, just from a fan's perspective, like, it would just be better. It would just be more interesting to just, like, who, like, LSU played Nicholls State earlier this year. Like, you're just like, and with all due respect to Nicholls State, I don't know, like, that's not who they should be playing. Like, we all want better ball at the end of the day. So hopefully this can lead into the next direction if we can get a little bit more a little bit tighter of an algorithm and a little bit more of a fan base. I think this could start to draw a legitimate conversation, which is all I really want this to be a part of.
Do you have a chat room in the site? And if you don't, are you planning to add one?
I don't have a chat room in the site. Where like there's discussions going on Reddit and Twitter. As a machine learning engineer with experience with chat rooms, those things can get just too many rules, too much.
You have to have moderators.
Too many people just not behaving themselves. I'd just rather not. Just want to focus on the rankings.
Sure.
What you do is absolutely fascinating. All it does is make me feel more and more obsolete every day. The machine learning and AI. I'm a project manager by trade, and this stuff scares me to death because the more stuff that they make automated, their jobs are going out the window, and it's really, really fascinating to me how this is working. So if there's any one last pitch you want to give to everybody, for one thing, we are very grateful for your time. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll do this again with you, but
I'd love to.
Over time, your equations will get better, right? The more data you get, the tighter this will become.
The tighter it becomes, I've learned lessons throughout the year of, the last couple of, when I've been building this algorithm, I've only been focusing on the college football selection committee. So I applied the same kind of concept to the AP poll, and there are just some holes that I see. I'm like, okay, I can fix that. I know how to make that more valuable. Like I said, it goes to the top 25, right, for the selection committee. I never even considered 26 through 31 for the AP poll. And then people saying, how could Vanderbilt not be the first one in? You have Memphis. Well, my algorithm doesn't care about after 25. And Vanderbilt happened to be 26, and Memphis didn't have any votes. Now they're getting votes. So it's a little bit ahead of the game, which is cool. But from a fan's perspective, the reputation of this entire thing is built off the accuracy of the algorithm. If the algorithm is not accurate, what's the point of any of this?
Right.
So really focusing on that, the more data is always better. There's a couple of like scenarios where Mizzou lost to Vandy in overtime this year, and the algorithm had them staying there, and everyone reamed me online saying, no way. Mizzou's going to drop a couple spots. They looked terrible, right? Well, if you had gone back in the data, since 2010, there was only like 4 scenarios in all of the rankings data that's happened where a team dropped by at least 4 spots after a win. So it's trying to make and to the algorithm, that's an outlier. It doesn't pay attention to that. That's just noise, right? But then it happens, and you want it to actually try to reflect that. So it's trying to elevate those types of things under the hood to say, pay more attention to this. These things can happen, but every year it will use the last seasons of data to make its correct its inferences, to make better predictions. That's the goal of this, is to try and make it as accurate as possible while still having an entertainment value to it as well.
Has BYU broken your calculation this year? That's my last question.
BYU has always been above the mark. The algorithm has yet to catch up to BYU. They're definitely flying higher, which was exciting to me coming onto this because I knew BYU was going to be a subject. That the selection committee has them quite high and higher than higher than the AP does. And I think that would make a lot of people in Utah very happy to hear. Same thing with Indiana. Indiana is getting people are buying into it, but the selection committee, according to our algorithm, is saying, yes, that's a legitimate team. That's a top 10 team, not a 11, 12, 13 team, which I think, which another reason why this is so cool and so much fun is a lot of these teams take pride in that ranking, especially a BYU or Indiana that hasn't had an enormous ranking in a long time. This is very, there's a difference between 9 and 13 to these fan bases, as you're well aware. So, that's the other fun thing is if it's kind of like gossip, right? If you're able to whisper to the BYU fan base, hey, they're going to be 8 after this week, it starts to stir it up. You start to get excited, and then you want to see the rankings and how it makes things more important. So my mom's side of the family are Fresno State fans. Like, if they're top 25, they are through the roof. It doesn't matter if they're 23 or 24. That's a badge of honor to them. So it's applicable to every single team in the country. It's not. It's for the top tier, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, right? 1, 2, or 3. Who cares? It means something to a lot of these teams, which is hopefully another reason why this will continue to grow, because it becomes important to all of college football fans.
It's amazing stuff.
Thank you.
Absolutely.